Hi, Mr. Davis. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I am so good. This is amazing. This
Thank
is
you.
amazing. And not only is it amazing, it speaks to, it really speaks to caregivers and what we go through. And I say we, I throw myself in there too, because I
Absolutely.
went through taking care of my mom and my dad, set up
Yeah.
hospice in my home, and the whole thing. So I really, really wanted to get into this and have an understanding with you. What I like most about this book is that it's steeped in the scriptures. So I want you to talk a little bit about your faith and your experience in the church and why the book is so scripture heavy.
So it's so scripture heavy. I grew up in church. I went to Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. That's the church that my mother and father took me to. I've been going to it ever since. And so one of the first things that my parents instilled in me was biblical values that whenever you have a problem in life or something comes your way, that you always have a God who's on your side. So just growing up, I learned to interpret the world through that lens and to help me best understand it so when struggles came. And so while I could have never anticipated being a caregiver, that was a struggle that came upon me that without my faith, I don't know that I would have gotten through that well. So it really taught me, like one of the scriptures that I cling to is 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 8. But if any man does not take care of his relatives, especially the members of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And that was a great rebuke to me because it helped me realize that it doesn't matter that I may feel inconvenienced, that there's a high calling on my life. And I have responsibilities unto my father. I have responsibilities unto family. So growing up in the church, it's always been an anchor for my life. I didn't go through every struggle perfectly, of course, as we are imperfect. We have a sin nature, we make mistakes. But understanding that there's a God who's on your side, who you can always run to, who's omnipresent, always available, it's really helped me go through a tumultuous time in life and any other issues that may come my way. I always know that there's a means of interpretation and how I can best respond in a way that glorifies God and serves people well.
Thank you so much. The name of the book is My Father's Chair: How Caregiving Taught Me about the Throne of Grace, right? I love
Yes.
that. And we're going to talk at the end about how people can get the book and how they can reach out to you and connect with
Okay.
you. But it's really about caregiving. And so tell me a little bit about the art of, I know your father was, he's a Super Bowl champion, actually, somebody that
Correct.
you've seen be a strong, this figure in your life. Tell me about how you started the caregiving process with your father.
So it started the caregiving process back in February of 2017. He had moved down to Texas, and so it was an agreement between my father and I that we were going to be living together to help take care of him. And so at first, it's one of those things you honestly just get thrown into it. You don't really know what to do at first. It's a brand new adjustment. I didn't know how to handle it because I've always looked at my father through the lens of the man I could play football with in the backyard, the one who used to chase me around the house. So seeing that image shift from two-time Super Bowl champion, 11-year NFL veteran to now my father needs my care, it's something that it's one of those truly learn as you go, trial and error kinds of things. But logistically, I was able to understand that, okay, if I can sort out my schedule according to my father needs me to take him to this appointment at one time, I can call my job ahead of time and say, hey, I'm going to be out this day. Or if there is some kind of medical transportation that I need to get him, knowing where to go get the tickets, how much they cost, what insurance covers. So it's really asking a lot of questions and partnering with the person who needs your care because they can give you a lot of information about their medical needs or what they're familiar with, and you partner with them in that so you can best serve them.
And that's always the best situation. A partnership is always the best situation where they can still communicate and really help you through their caregiving process. What you talked about in your book, burnout. And so, what did burnout look like for you personally? Like, how did you recognize it and how did you reach your breaking point with burnout?
So I recognize burnout when, basic needs such as hygiene begin to slip. There were times I didn't shower for a day or two, and I didn't realize it. And it wasn't that there was necessarily an odor, it was just, hey, I realize I have not showered today. Or same thing with brushing my teeth. There were some times that happened days at a time because I just didn't have the energy to muster up the strength to do it. These tasks that seemed very small, very menial beforehand, they became monumental difficulties because I was so consumed with caregiving, working full time as a case manager. I worked with adults, so, carrying those burdens of helping adults through their mental health issues at work, and then coming home and caring for my father. And at the same time, I was in grad school, and I was in grad school full time. So realizing I'm doing a lot, but getting to a place where I actually had time to sit down with myself and realize I'm in the classroom, I'm caring for my dad, I'm at work, but Ian's not present. And I began to realize that when my hygiene slipped, I was more isolating. I didn't really talk to my friends too much. I'd pick up maybe every third or fourth time that they had called. And I got to a point where it felt like I was just kind of floating. I didn't really know what my purpose was. It just kind of seems like I've become so routine. I don't know a life outside of taking care of my father. And so I slipped into a mild depression where it was like, okay, that was what woke me up to realize, okay, something's going on here. You need to get some help. And thankfully I did. I saw a therapist and went through some other measures that really helped me realize that the tasks that I'm undertaking, I'm doing them well, but if I'm not there, I don't believe that's something I should necessarily celebrate. But that's how I recognize burnout.
I like the fact that you took several trips and, got a chance to get away and get a break. So you touched on caregiving and your social circles. How did your friends, how did that change their relationship? Because I know for me, it was like, I can't go. I'm not doing it. Leave me alone. It was just like I kind of shut everybody out. But your true friends were there when you kind of look from behind the curtain. So how did that work for you and your relationships?
So it was pretty even keel in the sense that I would either, I'd pick up the phone, but I wouldn't go see them, or when I did see them, I was putting on a show because I didn't want anyone to know that I was going through what I was. And not that it's anything to celebrate, but as a man, sometimes it's hard to articulate how you feel. And I have always been the friend that people come to, that people look up to, that people admire. So for me to know that I'm not in an admirable state, I feared that if I'm in a social setting, that someone's going to see right through me. So I would avoid my friends and I'd get with them maybe once or twice a year, just so it was like, okay, we saw him in some 6 month interval. But it wasn't as frequent as it used to be because I didn't want to have to tell anybody, I'm not Superman, I'm feeling burdened right now. And so by the grace of God, I have friends who they're very forgiving, very loving, they're understanding. And when I was able to sit down and talk with them, they're like, we kind of figured that, but we just wanted to let you come to us. And so while the engagement changed as far as how frequently we saw them or I saw them, the love didn't, which I'm eternally grateful for. Because sometimes you have friends who don't understand why their friend disappears and they take offense to it. Mine didn't, and I'm so thankful that they didn't, and they were there for me when I was able to be available and admit, hey, this is what I was going through. So that's how it went.
That is such a blessing. That's always the thing, right? Friends that really, really understand and they're just waiting for you to come back and still there with open arms. I know you talked about in the book something that people don't think about a lot in caregiving. They just think about the physical act of caregiving, but there was paperwork, there were medical devices, there were affairs that needed to be taken care of, and you were right there with your dad. How did you navigate that? Because people, like you said in the book, open the mail up, open it up and look and see what it is. Sometimes people don't do that. How did you navigate that?
So one of the things I did was uh, more so, and this was more so once my father had passed,
Hmm.
praying about what I open because you know that they're gone. You go to the funeral, you go through all of those things, you know that they're not there anymore. When you open up paperwork, there's a stark reminder that they're actually gone. And so you see on paperwork, you see their date of birth, date of death, decedent's domicile at the time of death, cause of death. And having to read that so many times, it was just this stark reminder your parents really not here. This is your reality. Because my father and I were extremely close. So for my fortress not to be present and then be opening up mail that is constantly reminding me that he's not present, I'm grateful that I was able to open it up, but I just didn't want to. It was in my mind, well, what am I going to read today? What am I going to have to close today? What account, what estate, what's going to have to get settled today? But navigating that paperwork was really helpful through like the agencies that are listed on some of the correspondence that you get. You can call them and they can walk you through it. Partnering with my brother, my mother, being familiar with these processes and, going through it as a collaborative effort. But as far as the emotional side of it goes, understanding that everything has a deadline. Depending on the state that you're in, sometimes it's 5 years that passes, and then the state can take the funds or whatever it is that a living heir has yet to claim. So going through all of that really helped me learn, when the time comes when I lose a loved one or an I pass, my family will know what to do and things of that nature if I were to have a wife or children. So thinking for the generations ahead while I'm dealing with what's going on in the now. And in the paperwork, once you get it settled, handling things as expediently and as efficiently as you can, because you do need that mental space to be freed up. I didn't actually grieve in the fullness of my father's death until I was really done with the paperwork. And something that I don't think a lot of people understand is that, the shock of losing a parent or a loved one, that happens almost immediately. But the chance to actually go through the emotions of that, when you have to handle all that paperwork, you don't get a chance to feel everything that you need to. And so I didn't grieve until a couple years later. I cried, but I didn't fully grieve until I was on the last rounds of the paperwork because it was like, now that this is out of the way, I can cry and I can feel all of those things that I thought I should have felt a few years prior. And that was the difficulty of the paperwork, getting that chance to cry later because it felt kind of fraudulent because I battled with guilt. I was like, yes, I'm crying, I'm hurting, but why am I not falling apart? My
Mm-hmm.
father, I loved him to death. He was everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt fraudulent for those years. I was like, is something wrong with me? Were dad and I not as close as I thought? And it's crazy how God works because when I was done with that last round of paperwork, that emotion was hard to deal with, but it was a subtle reminder from God that you loved your father just as much as you thought you did. You were just busy, son. And when that revelation came, as much as it hurt, I felt like I could drop my shoulders for the first time and just breathe. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, we were as close as I thought. And that caregiving journey and paperwork, it can convince you otherwise. And so that was hard to deal with, but I'm just grateful that that was something we were able to get through.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I
Mm.
understand that. I understand that feeling. I can almost pinpoint it when you can kind of just go, "Okay, everything is
Mhm.
taken care of, and now I'm grieving." So you said a really important word, and that's collaborating. And you mentioned your mother, and you mentioned your brother. How did your family support you through this process?
Always checking in with me. My family, we're just a really, really close family. So when one member of the family is going through something, everyone's going to be there for them. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if that's me, my sister, my brother, whomever. We're all going to be there for each other. And so my father and I, again, were extremely close, and they knew the toll that that took on me emotionally. Just one, losing him, and two, being the line of care when he did pass away. So they would always check in on me, especially my big sister. So she's a psychologist, and she is just one of the most brilliant human beings I have ever known, and I'm so grateful that God positions people like that to help you through these things because she would check in on me and my sister has that ability to just see right through you in a
Mhm.
very kind and subtle way. She's not like an overbearing, in your face kind of
Mhm.
woman, but with a very subtle look, she can ask you, how are you really doing, Ian? And it's like everything that I try to hide, I can just disrobe emotionally in front of my sister and help me out. So all of them have been helpful, but especially my sister was instrumental in helping me make sense of the world that my father is no longer in.
Yeah, yeah, I was blessed in that way too. My sister was really a champion, and you need that. You need
Yeah.
that. Once you got to the other side of caregiving, how did you rediscover who you were not being a caregiver?
So it was a really difficult transition because for the first probably 4 or 5 months, it was really trying to figure out how do I handle not going to go pick up medications? How do I handle not going to a facility? How do I address not having my schedule centered around my father anymore? So the first few months for me it was just a strange time where it was like, okay, I'm trying to grieve, but I'm busy with paperwork. I'm also trying to figure out what life is like now that I don't have the responsibilities that I used to. And while our identity is in Christ, sometimes when you're familiar with something for so long, you start to think that's who you are. And who I believed I was, I'm Ian the caregiver. I'm not
Mhm.
Ian God's child. I'm Ian the caregiver. So when I wasn't that, rediscovering who and what I was extremely challenging. And so it started out by me acknowledging that as much as I love my father, I don't have to allow the remainder of my life to be a memorial of his. So I love him with my whole heart. I'm always going to be an extension of his legacy. But understanding that I have to forge a path that isn't about my dad was the first step to helping me recover and to discover who I was. I also engaged previously enjoyed hobbies. So I love to eat. I'm a foodie. I love to go to restaurants. I love sports. All of those things that I was too fatigued to do when I was taking care of him, I re-engaged all of those whenever caregiving was over with. And something else I did to rediscover myself was really engaging nature. So I love creation, like mountains, beaches, cliffs, coastlines, all of those things I've always loved. And so I love bodies of water as well. So right here in downtown Houston, there's the Buffalo Bayou Park that I go to. And, I believe that God is omnipresent, but I believe there are certain places you can go and experience a different kind of intimacy with him. And for me, it's that park in downtown. So really being there with the stillness of the water, just being with nature, no one's around, no electronic devices. It's just me and the Lord in creation. That really helped me hear his voice more, that everything's going to be okay. If I structure creation this way, if I make the water flow the way that it does, if I make the trees grow the way that they do, how much more am I intentional in helping out my children? And so doing that really helped me rediscover that I'm one of God's children and I can live from that. I don't have to live according to the things that I became familiar with in caregiving. And it's a difficult process because it kind of feels like, okay, if I'm letting go of everything I did as a caregiver, am I erasing my dad? And that was a big struggle for me. But God revealed to me that no, you're not erasing him. You're just letting him go. You're not forgetting about him, but you are you're letting him go so you can move on with the life that I have for you. And that was really how I was able to rediscover who I was.
And that is so powerful. What you just said is so, so powerful. And I say that because it's almost like we build a shrine
Yeah.
around, and I found myself doing it every minute. I was posting on Facebook, my mom and dad, this
Yeah.
whole, I don't know, people were tired of me. Oh my God. But um, that's what we did, right?
Hmm.
And it was and there's a tinge of guilt that you carry when you're happy and when you're smiling and you're like, oh, but I lost both my parents 4 months apart. I should be sad.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? So I'm so glad that you got to speak to that. Um, One of the things that you and I have in common is that we were mental health professionals. I have a master's degree in counseling, spent many years counseling in education, I'm an educator. How did you, because I know as someone who supports or is trained in mental health, what was it like to realize that you couldn't always help yourself? You know, as a
Hmm.
mental health professional, I should be able to help myself, right?
Correct.
How did you realize that you couldn't help yourself, and how did you deal with that?
One of the ways that I really discovered that is when I was sitting down with clients in sessions. Um, I was realizing I'm giving all this wonderful advice to them. They're latching on to it. I'm watching improvements in their life. And then, I go over my session notes before I sign them and my clinical team leader approve them. And I'm going through these notes. I'm like, I'm preaching this information to other people. I'm not applying this to myself. Like, this actually works.
Yeah.
And then I went through that period of, am I a hypocrite? I'm over here saying this for these people, but I can't do it for myself. Is there
Hmm.
something wrong with me? Am I trying to block things out? Am I numb? What's going on that the mental health professional can't manage his own mental health?
Yeah.
And so, really having to sit down with myself and realize that although it may be a different walk of life for the clients that I'm serving as far as what led to their issues, that helped me realize everyone's human, just me. And I don't have to put on my professional hat to the point that I can't be personal with myself anymore. And that's what was happening. And sometimes when you are a healer or you help other people, even if it's inadvertent, you can sometimes become kind of prideful with that and think, I got it like that. I can help these people. But when it's your turn to have to acknowledge, I'm not Superman and I don't always know what to do, that's when that gets to the point where it's like, well, there's really nowhere else to go here but up. So let's deal with ourselves and let's acknowledge that I need help. And the way that I really did that is through journaling. I love to write. And so something that has really helped me with journaling, which is what I often recommended for clients, it gave me times to see what day do I seem to be most frustrated on? What seems to be a difficult time of the year? How can I get ahead of those kinds of things? And when I really started looking at the things that I was going through on paper, having that tangible issue in front of me really helped me put strategies in front to let's deal with this. Let's be communicative. Let's call mom. Let's call my brother or my sister and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way." There's a picture that I love. It has three batteries. There's one that's green, one that's yellow, and one that's red. And when the yellow battery's in the middle, it says, "Ask for help here." I
Okay.
learned how to do that, and that really changed a lot of things for me because I was asking for help when the phone was about to die, if you will. And at that point, it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's
Right.
consumed you so much. But
Mm-hmm.
learning to get help in the middle was what really, really did things for me.
I kind of want to go back because you talked about turning to different types of sins,
Hmm.
right, during your process. Can you talk more about that, maybe to somebody who is going through caregiving right now,
Hmm.
and how they can, you know, how they can remove themselves from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in chapter 6, it's titled Stop Medicating with Sin. So, I talk about a few sins that, in general, people can go into, or ones that I dealt with as a caregiver. And so, one of them was alcohol. That, according to the text, the consumption of alcohol itself is not a sin, but it's how you use it that becomes that. And I found myself when I would go out to eat, I'd have 4 or 5 drinks. And I convinced myself that because I know what's going on around me, I still have some situational awareness that this isn't a problem. And
Mhm.
so what I was using it for eventually was trying to escape the pain of caregiving or to feel high, if you will, off of the fact that there's some substance that I'm putting in me that's making me feel like things got better. And whenever that came back down, I was like, no, it's not. It just made the problem worse. So, us as mental health professionals, we know that alcohol is a depressant. So it slows down your central nervous system, makes you
Mhm.
feel good, makes you feel relaxed. But whenever all of that wears off, the problems you were dealing with beforehand are now exacerbated. So the depression's worse, the anxiety's worse. And it makes the situation at hand seem bigger than it already was, even though it is a big deal. And so what really helped me get out of that, God was allowing me to ponder on my athletic days when I played ball in college. I was never a big drinker, but I would drink sparingly during the season, but I really stopped doing that because I could feel it in the games. And so that was how I got out of that. It was like, think about the health you practice. If you did this for a basketball game, you can do this for me too.
Yes.
Um, and so that was something that really helped out. And then getting involved in sinful or carnal relationships to feel that somebody's paying attention to me, a woman is paying attention to me, her warmth, something about her is close to me, so I feel distracted from all of the things that I'm dealing with taking care of my father. I don't want to acknowledge that his life is eventually going to end. um, I don't want to acknowledge that I wasn't the perfect caregiver. I wasn't the perfect son. So, how about let's be in a relationship to distract myself from my pain? But I can't use another human being to cope with my own issues. That's something I have to deal with individually. And so, that with carnal relationships or slipping into places I didn't need to go happened. And then being busy for the sake of being busy. There were a lot of things that I did during caregiving. I picked up extra jobs, side hustles, things of that nature. But I just remember asking myself regarding, picking up extra jobs and extra work. It was like, do I need the extra money or am I trying to fill a void with a filled up schedule? And the answer was the latter. And I realized that, a job itself or making more money is not a sin. But if you're using a measure other than God or something that is an extension of his character to help you out, it is sinful. And that revelation for me wasn't me being obedient to God saying, hey, let's quit this job. I talk about in the book how I was sitting down with my project manager when I worked at the Harris Center. And he knew I was a caregiver. He always checked in on me. I told him I was doing an extra job at Amazon handling packages. He knew I was in grad school full time. And he just so lovingly but bluntly told me, you need to quit that job. He's like, you're doing too much. And he was very honest with me about in these situations, it doesn't typically get better. And one of the things that I will always love and respect him for, his name is Jeff. when he asked me to, or when he told me rather to quit the side job I was doing, he wasn't asking me to do that so I could be the best performer at the Harris Center. He was doing that because he genuinely cared for me. And just how God can use people in even the subtlest of ways to lovingly rebuke you, to comfort you, and realize you can't do it all. You're not Superman. And just something as a man, as a caregiver, there's this image that we want to portray to the world like we got it all together. And
Mhm.
Jeff helped me realize, no, you don't. And there's no shame in that. That's perfectly fine to say you're not Superman. I didn't create you to be that. And so those are the things that I ventured into, that were sinful or had a sinful heart posture when I was a caregiver, trying to escape all of those things.
Excellent, excellent. I wrote down a little note, and we're almost finished.
No worries.
Not being a perfect caregiver, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean, you said that, and so none of us were perfect caregivers. How did you deal with that? And so, and what made you not a perfect caregiver? Why do we strive for perfection trying to be a caregiver? It's impossible.
It's true. I think one of the reasons we strive for perfection as caregivers, because as much as we might not like it or how difficult it is, there can be a bit of a pride thing, like, I'm the primary caregiver. I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. And then in that, you realize you're still human, right?
Right.
It's like that revelation of my humanity was so difficult to deal with. But one of the things that made me realize I was not a perfect caregiver, my mother and father have always taught me to speak with respect, speak with dignity. I had never, ever cussed at my parents, anybody, my father, anyone. And I remember I got really frustrated with my father one day, and I just cussed at him. And the moment that the profanity exited my mouth, I just fell apart. I was like, I can't believe I talked to my father like that. I have never in my life, I've always upheld him to the highest honor, the
Mhm.
greatest respect, and to slip in that manner broke my heart because I was like, how did I get to a place where I just talked to my father like that? This man means everything to me. And I repented. Um, and thankfully, my dad is such a forgiving man that he let it go. But I hung on to that, and it made me realize that there's nothing that I'm exempt from. Just because I may be strong in all these other places, that doesn't mean that strength is going to transfer to caregiving. There are going to be times where, you're realizing your parents' humanity, their frailty, but caregiving makes you realize your own. It's kind of like what I've heard from friends of mine who are married. They say that marriage does not hide your issues, it magnifies them. Caregiving, I've learned, does the same thing. It's going to eventually make you tell on yourself. And when you do, how do you handle telling on yourself and really receiving my dad's forgiveness, God's forgiveness? My dad understood very quickly, my son's speaking from a place of frustration. This isn't how he actually feels about me. And that is something that I'm so grateful. My dad, it was a godly man. He had the wherewithal to know that this is not my kid speaking. This is a frustrated version of my child, but this is not ultimately who he is. And
Wow.
that's the way that through my father's love, I've learned that God looks at us. So we're his sons and daughters, and we can live from that. We don't have to live from condemnation. We don't have to live from guilt. We need to be wary of our sin, but we don't have to live according to that title. We can live from what he says he is. And living from according to what my dad said I am was his son really helped me be okay with the fact that I am imperfect. So from that point on, there was never another slip up. There were never any of those things anymore. And it was coming to my dad to say, hey, dad, I'm a little bit frustrated with this, or can we put this off in a little while? It really helped me talk through things instead of bottling up, then blowing up, which was the pattern that led to cussing and things of that nature.
Right. I'm so glad that you got to speak to that because there were times when I felt like, oh, I shouldn't have talked to my mom like that. Oh, I shouldn't have said, and
Mhm.
they really did understand the frustration. And also, what I learned in caregiving, they're frustrated and
Yeah,
they have lost a lot of their independence. And sometimes they lash out. And then
they do.
you can't be hurt. You can't take it so
Hmm.
personally, right? And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you spoke to that. You also mentioned that the Texas Medical Center took care of your father and took care of my parents as well. So I have to shout out to them because they
Yeah,
have excellent care at the
they
Texas
do.
Medical Center. We have the best medical center in the world. Can
We
you just
do.
speak just a little bit about how the Texas Medical Center helped you and your family get through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my father, like his appointments, they were outpatient with him, but the doctors that were with him, they really, really took care of him because this is just who I am as a man. I'm talking ferociously defensive of my family. So if they're going to be in someone's hands, they better be in state of the art, best hands available. And the
Hmm.
way that those doctors just comforted me before I even really had to say anything, it's like, we're taking good care of your father. And my father is very communicative. I mean, he never lost his mental cognizance, anything of the sort. So he was very wary, aware of what was going on, but he also understood how defensive his little boy got over him.
Hmm.
So there were
Hmm.
moments when he was talking to the physicians and he wasn't really speaking for himself. He was speaking for me. So I didn't have to say anything. But
Right.
just those doctors were like, hey, we love your father. We're taking great care of him. Here's what you can do to help him out when you're away from here, or here's how we can help him with, getting medicine or whatever specialist he needs to see. We're going to keep you in the loop. And they comforted me. And it was beyond the cliche, hey, we're doing everything we can. The Texas Medical Center went above and beyond, did everything and then some that someone could ask for. And they really established a relationship with my dad. It wasn't like this is the client I see every 6 to 8 weeks. They really
Hmm.
cared for him. And so when he had passed, they all reached out, were like, we loved your dad, X, Y, and Z, and he was such a great man. And so
Hmm.
it was heartwarming to me to know that as much as they impacted him, he had an impact exactly. And so when I work in the Texas Medical Center. That's where the Youth Aware Mental Health headquarters is. So when I drive by it, I'm just reminded that this is a great place to be
Hmm.
because they're going to take care of you. They're going to do every single thing they can to make sure you get the best care possible. So, collaborating with them, having access to medical records and things like that. Any questions I had, I could go look in the dossier or anything else like that. They would update me when there were things. Or even if he called to confirm an appointment already, they'd call me too, things
Hmm.
like that. So it was really great to have them on his side because we often joked. My dad always said, if there was a place to need care, this is the place to be. So I'm just so grateful that that's where he was. And that's who was taking care of him up to the final years of his life.
I'm going to let you go, but I want you to tell us a little bit about how to get the book. Of course, if we can order it directly from you, tell us the name of the book. I have my copy right
Thank you.
here. And so, yeah, and tell us about any thing that you're working on, projects, or anything you want to talk about.
Okay, so the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Again, it's called My Father's Chair: How Caregiving Taught Me About the Throne of Grace. Those are the two channels through which it is most available. I know it's on Books a Million, some other ones, but those are the easiest channels I would say to access. For those who may get the book, I would ask that you do leave a review on Amazon because that does help it become more visible through their channels. So once you're finished reading it, do please do leave a review. I am reachable on Instagram. My Instagram page is called Insights with Ian. So I'm available on there. I'm pretty active. I post often. And then for the Barnes and Noble channel, if you prefer to go through that one, you can go through that one too. But if there are reviews left, I would ask that they be left on Amazon. Things that I'm working on. Hopefully having some more podcast appearances scheduled. Looking forward to some of that within the next few months. So I'll share more of those details as the time comes, but I'm looking forward to a few more podcast appearances and places to get the book more visible. I'm in the works right now with some other people I've connected with to have another book signing, but I will share those details in days to come.
Good deal. Now, I wanted to ask you this question. I should have asked you before that, but of course, we'll fix that. Where are
No
you
worries.
now in your journey? How has caregiving changed you? Because we're never the same.
Mm.
After it, you're never the same. How has it changed you?
It's made me more grateful that now that I'm out of caregiving, and I wouldn't say I'm 100% recovered, but I'm close. As far as the logistics of it, I'm hardly really even in the pattern of having to be a caregiver anymore. It's just now that space of I've gotten a real chance to grieve, and I just miss my dad. There are times I just want to call him and talk, say something silly, be in that space. So just adjusting to that. But as far as that profound emotional hurt, by the grace of God, I'm beyond that space. But as far as what it looks like for me in my everyday life, I'm very grateful for things. So when it's my mom saying, "Honey, are you available to go to dinner?" I go. And I did beforehand anyway, but it's understanding that, we're not going to have our parents forever. And something that caregiving has really helped me understand is that live from love, don't live from fear. Because at first it was like, I need to pick up every single call, say yes to every single request because this person might pass soon. And so learning to live from love instead of fear has really helped me out. And that's something that I implement every day, not taking things for granted. Even the simplicities of going outside, looking up at the sky, looking at the trees, just understanding the beauty that's in front of me and that I don't have to go far to look for it. So that is something that has definitely brought about change. And as far as how it has changed me, it's helped me be prepared for whatever situations come at me in life. Because to date, losing my father was the most difficult thing I've ever dealt with. So when I cross paths with someone else who's lost a parent, someone who is a caregiver, is about to be one, who's just gotten out of it, I know how to minister to them. I know how to help them out. I know where to direct them. So it's made me much more informed and available to people who need the help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was amazing, amazing talking to you. I want everybody to go out and get your book, and we will make sure that they know where to get it from. Thank you. You have been a complete blessing, not only to myself, but I'm sure to anybody who's going to watch this.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's a blessing to have you to be on with you. So thank you for extending the opportunity.
Of course.